So you're looking for a new keyboard and wondering whether the TKL direction, the smaller size, is right for you. So in this video, I'll talk about the benefits, the drawbacks, my personal experience with TKL keyboards, because I have a bit of a keyboard fetish, if you may. And I know the topic of keyboard sizes is very personal, varies from user to user, but hopefully this video will highlight why TKL keyboards are coming up now and more predominant on the marketplace. So we'll talk about all that right after this. Creativity is fueled by the best instruments. It doesn't always come easy, and in the process you often realize how important quality is. The RD400 by OCZ gives you quality and speed with M.2 interface, Toshiba NAND flash, and a PCI bracket, making it possible to focus on what matters. Invest in storage that makes a difference with a 5-year advanced warranty. So first, let's establish the size reference. So we have the full-size keyboards, which are very common. It's got all the keys, usually with macro controls and separate media buttons. Then we have the TKL or Tenkeyless, or maybe referred to sometimes as 80% keyboards that are basically full-size keyboards, but without the numpad, with all the other keys there. And then they're in between full-size and TKL keyboards. I would call them, let's say, medium keyboards. It's basically also falls into the TKL distinction, where the numpad is sort of built into the arrow keys, so it is a slightly larger board than the standard TKL, but it's not as long as full-size boards. And then below the standard Tenkeyless distinction, we have 60% and lower keyboards, which are very small, but yet you offer such a unique user experience because each key has this multi-layered functionality built in. Because keyboards are so little, you need to find space on the board to perform the standard tasks that you would normally find on a full-size or a TKL keyboard. But for this video, let's talk about the TKL in this form factor. So basically a standard full-size board without the numpad. So first, let's start with the positives, and the obvious one is the smaller keyboard size occupies less space on your desk, which means that you can either have a smaller desk and still not have it look cluttered, or you can have more items around the keyboard without it interfering with how you use your mouse and keyboard and how you just interact with your space. I would also say it's also more visually appealing having a smaller keyboard in your space, regardless of if your desk is large or small. It just looks better when the keyboard is smaller. It's also easier to carry around, fits in your backpack if you travel a lot, if you go to LAN events, or you want to just take a keyboard somewhere. It also fits in your coat. A smaller keyboard allows less complications with the mousepad, so they don't have to overlap, whereas with full-size keyboards, that little corner where the numpad is overlaps with the mousepad and kind of causes the keyboard to tilt. So smaller keyboard, less interference with the mousepad. However, one of the main advantages I would argue would be hand placement and this ergonomic improvement that a smaller keyboard delivers, because your right and left hands are naturally closer together. So this transitioning between going from mouse to keyboard hand movement is it has to cover less distance, and also you're just naturally hands closer together when you're typing or using the mouse at the same time is more comfortable. And because of this distance reduction from your left and right hand, it means that your keyboard can be sort of oriented properly, whereas with a full-size keyboard you would sometimes see it being angled to reduce that space, which is a common trick for for gaming, for example, but you won't have to do that with a TKL keyboard. And again, coming back to this ergonomic improvement, a smaller keyboard would allow your field of view to be a little bit more centered with where you're typing to, let's say if you have a screen right in front of you, whereas with a larger board it might be offset slightly, and so your hands would also be offset. Also, in our experience, a lot of TKL keyboards, a smaller size, have a removable cable that complements this whole portability factor, whereas full-size keyboards, some have a removable cable, but majority don't. And one more I will mention, this is maybe just me, but my perception of build quality with smaller TKL keyboards in general is just better. Maybe it's because the frame is the same as what you would find on a larger keyboard, but because it's not as long, it doesn't have as much flex, for example, and they just feel really good. So yeah. perception of build quality may be improved on a smaller keyboard. And now let's move on to the negatives, and don't even mention the lack of a numpad because that is the nature of the keyboard. However, I so miss that side enter. And that is because for a lot of applications that side enter is used as a secondary command, so it's not your simple enter like you would find in the middle of the keyboard, but is, for example, in Photoshop, it's used to accept changes. So if you make adjustment to your layer, you can quickly press that side enter to accept changes with your thumb without having to lift off your hand from your mouse. You can do the same thing with control enter if you don't have that side enter, but it's just more time consuming. And one walk around you can do is map something on this side of the keyboard to that side enter, and therefore if you need to quickly press that side enter with your thumb, you can do so, but as long as your keyboard allows that remapping or macro customization. And of course, because the size being one of the benefits of a TKL keyboard, there's usually a lot less room on the frame for media control. So everything's kind of built into the keys, which I would say is not a negative, but some may see that as a negative because maybe you want a slightly, wider frame to allow more buttons for media controls, but majority of them are built into the keys like this home button or the F keys. And the final major negative for me would be price. Why is it that the TKL keyboards are generally more expensive than their exactly the same variant of a full-size keyboard? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, it is market demand and maybe there is more need for smaller keyboards, and therefore companies are monetizing on the fact that more people want TKL direction and they're now starting to come out the market and they're more expensive, but the incentive is not there. The incentive is for you to stay with a full-size keyboard because it is cheaper than a TKL version. That is just unfortunate because TKL keyboards are awesome. So yeah, that is my list of positives and negatives regarding TKL keyboards. I will leave a bunch of them in the description below for you to check out regarding models and pricing and availability and all of that. And for all of those who are using TKL keyboards or lower, what's your experience been like? Share it in the comments below. I'm sure a lot of people are trying to decide whether or not TKL is the right direction for them. So let's have this conversation. I'm Dmitry with Canucks. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.